The signal arrived on a Thursday. It didn't begin with a blaring siren or a cryptic message. It began with a blink. One blink, then another, seen only by the Halley Array in the Andes, where the cold wind never slept and the skies told stories and frequencies. For 3 seconds, every telescope trained on Deep Space Zone K, 47 recorded a blip, tight, rhythmic, mathematical. And then it was gone. Dr. Lynn Calder was the first to notice. She'd been running spectral analysis for dark matter scatter when the anomaly clipped the baseline like a scalpel. It wasn't just noise. It had a structure, a binary scaffold wrapped in harmonic overtones no natural process could replicate. Within 20 minutes, the Halley team had scrubbed every possibility. Pulsars, cosmic microwave bursts, satellite interference. Nothing fit. By the time Lynn uploaded the findings to the International Deep Space Network, half the world was watching reruns of Celebrity Trials, unaware that something had just knocked on Earth's door from 6 light years away. By Friday morning, the signal had returned, this time longer. It carried modulation, pulse within pulse, cascading in a pattern that suggested both urgency and intent. Cryptographers in Zurich, Tokyo, and Washington launched every AI they had at it. Within hours, a pattern emerged. The same sequence repeated every 37 minutes, encoded in what resembled fractal linguistic clusters, language nested in language, like Russian dolls. They called it the SOS. Nobody could confirm whether it was truly a distress call, but the rhythm mimicked Earth's own emergency frequencies. Some saw coincidence, others intention. By Saturday, the first conspiracy threads choked the internet. They've always been here. This is a trap. Project Blue Beam confirmed. But beneath the noise, in rooms with no windows and guarded doors, the question boiled like a fever. What are they running from? General Darrell Keene stared at the briefing slides with a hawk's stillness. His jaw clenched harder with each frame. Orbital trajectories, energy estimates, gravitational echoes. A veteran of Cold War black projects and one-time head of the Lunar Defense Protocol, Keene didn't scare easy. But even he couldn't shake the hollowness in his chest when the final slide came up. Unidentified fleet, estimated arrival, 92 hours. The ships were silent, invisible to radar, detectable only through slight disturbances in solar radiation and low-gravity ripples. Yet, they moved in perfect symmetry, like a school of cosmic predators slipping through the deep. 27 vessels, each one the size of Manhattan, triangular, pulse-engined, and aiming straight for Earth. NASA tried to calm the public. Unidentified doesn't mean hostile, they said. We're still analyzing. But when 3 independent space agencies confirmed the trajectory matched the SOS origin point, an abandoned planetary system orbiting a dying star, calm turned to chaos. Lynn Calder was summoned to Geneva. She hated the flight, hated the way the world seemed both impossibly vast and suddenly far too small. At the summit, scientists, military officials, and cultural liaisons sat around an obsidian table with grim faces. No jokes, no politics, just equations, maps, and silence. Lynn presented her findings, the recursive loops, the embedded mathematical constants, the urgent repetition. They're not just saying they're in trouble, she said, voice steady. They're saying we are next. A pause followed, thick enough to choke on. You're telling us this is a warning? Keene asked. No, she said, shaking her head. I'm telling you it's both. A call for help. And a message. Whatever they fled, it's coming. The room was still. Somewhere outside, a protester screamed through a megaphone. The echo bled to the walls like static. The president of the European Space Council leaned forward. What if it's bait? Nobody answered. By Monday, the ships became visible, just barely, on high-orbit scopes. They shimmered like mirages, flickering at the edge of known physics. Heat signatures red cold as stone. No communication, no emissions, no weapons deployed. Just movement, deliberate, coordinated. And then they stopped, 36,000 kilometers above the equator, in geostationary silence. The fleet held position. No weapons, no aggression, no contact. Earth's skies bristle with defense satellites, energy weapons primed, nuclear systems on standby. Keene ran drills until his officers dropped. He didn't trust silence. Silence was the oldest trick in war. Yet Lynn thought differently. She watched the formations, the way the ships pulsed in synchronized intervals. As if breathing, there was rhythm in tension. She began to suspect the formation itself was language, a kind of orbital semaphore. That night, alone in her hotel, she laid out the ship positions on a grid. She matched them against the repeating SOS signal. Her fingers trembled. The sequence wasn't random. It was a map, a star chart. The pattern traced a curved arc through space, leading from their dead system through 6 others, each one recently silenced in radio frequencies. Lynn recognized 2 as sites of ancient pulsars that, until last year, had pulsed for millennia. She closed her laptop, heart thudding. This fleet wasn't lost. It was running. News leaked. It always did. A whistleblower from the Japanese Space Defense Initiative posted a blurred image, a triangular silhouette eclipsing stars. The world went cold. Panic spread. Cities rioted. Religious leaders declared the end, or the beginning, or both. In Washington, Keene stared at the photograph, jaw clenched. "We need options," he said. "If they make a move—" "They already have," said Lynn, stepping into the room with the urgency of someone who had left sleep behind days ago. "They've been speaking to us since they stopped. We're just too primitive to understand it." "You're sure?" She handed him a revised model. The signal embedded in their formation shows a threat vector, an object following their path, bigger than anything we've seen, a gravitational anomaly with no light signature. It's moving fast. Faster than them? She nodded. And it's accelerating. Keene turned to the digital globe hovering in the center of the room. Earth spun quietly, oblivious. "If we let them stay," he asked, "what are we inviting here?" "Maybe extinction," Lynn said. "Maybe survival." He studied her. "And if we send them away?" "Then we stand alone." The 2 stared at each other, scientist and soldier, each holding half a broken picture. Outside, the sky above Geneva darkened as the first of the alien ships blinked once. Just once, its surface humming with an amber glow. A message. Lynn looked up. They're waiting for an answer. And Earth, suspended between salvation and silence, had to choose whether to speak. The world watched breathless as the fleet hovered in silence. They made no demands. They answered no signals. They remained aloft, unmoving, as if studying humanity with unseen eyes. For 3 days, every military and scientific institution braced against the stillness, as though motion alone would trigger catastrophe. Inside a fortified command center buried beneath Mount Norwin, General Darrell Keene moved with rigid efficiency, every step echoing purpose. But his eyes betrayed unease. He was a man built for action, forged in theaters where threats showed themselves through gunmetal and heat. But this waiting from above, this silent proximity, it unnerved him. Across the continent, Dr. Lynn Calder immersed herself in pattern recognition, filling digital walls with equations, fractals, and orbital telemetry. She hardly slept. Her once crisp lab coat now looked lived in. The fleet, she argued, was speaking, just not in words. Their geometry, their motionless presence, their refusal to engage, all of it meant something. Symbols didn't require sound to be heard. While Lynn worked, others speculated. Ancient historians pointed to mirror formations etched into temple floors in Peru and Sudan, claiming the fleet's shape matched celestial diagrams buried in ancient codices. Religious leaders fractured in their interpretations, some calling the visitors angels of revelation, others warning of a demonic deception. Political analysts fought on broadcasts, framing the silence as either an act of passive invasion or a desperate plea for sanctuary. But all the while, the fleet said nothing, and the silence screamed louder with each passing hour. Then they moved, just slightly, just enough. One of the smaller ships peeled away from the main formation and descended into the exosphere. It hovered above the Indian Ocean, casting a shadow that spanned half the Maldives before locking into position. Satellite cameras strained to capture details, but interference scrambled most images into static-laced mosaics. Keene was the first to respond. Alert Sky Shield units. I want ground-to-orbit missile lock within 10 seconds. No, Lynn said, stepping into the command room. Her voice didn't rise, but it cut through the tension like glass. They're trying to show us something. If they wanted to strike, they would have done it from orbit. Keen glanced at her. Forgive me if I'm not eager to watch Earth become a cautionary tale. She moved to the center screen. The ship's descent path glimmered in blue lines, intersecting with latitude and longitude markers over the Indian subcontinent. They're positioning themselves over Mohenjo-Daro. Mohenjo what? An archaeological site, one of the world's oldest urban settlements. Some believe it was destroyed by an unknown energy source thousands of years ago. Keen raised an eyebrow. You think they were here before? I think they're reminding us they were. The implications knotted the air in the room. If true, Earth wasn't a chance landing. It was a return. Meanwhile, religious sites across India saw a surge in activity. Priests chanted prayers once long forgotten, while villagers lit lanterns and gazed skyward, unmoved by military alerts. One temple near the ship's shadow reported spontaneous electromagnetic interference, bells ringing without touch, candles burning in strange colors. Then, for the first time, the fleet spoke. It wasn't a voice, but a projection. A wave of structured light unfolded from the ship above Mohenjo-Daro. In it, symbols glowed like fireflies, each one an impossible hybrid geometry and language, spiraling in motion. Earth's AI systems left to decode, but Lynn had already anticipated the message. It was a pattern she'd seen days ago, nested within the SOS. What does it say? Keen asked, watching as the golden script danced in the command center. Lynn stared at the screen, her mouth a hard line. It's a name, a designation. For what? For them. The translation was rough. Language lacked equivalence. But the closest approximation chilled the room. The exiled. Keen's jaw tightened. Exiled from where? From what? She didn't answer. She wasn't sure. But in her gut, she felt it. This wasn't a vanguard. This wasn't conquest. This was refuge sought by outcasts who'd once had a place, now burned or forbidden. That night, Lynn met Keen in the strategy lounge, its windows darkened against the stars. He poured 2 glasses of something old and smoky, sliding one toward her. You really think they're running? He asked. Yes, she said. From what? She looked out at the sky. Something worse than them. The next morning, the fleet shifted again. 3 ships broke formation and maneuvered into a triangular array above the Pacific, their positions aligning with major tectonic fault lines. The message, however abstract, became clear. They were watching Earth's pressure points, its fragile seams. A warning or a gesture of stewardship? The U.S. Joint Chiefs interpreted it as posturing, show of power. Keen disagreed. His instinct told him they were being studied not for weakness, but for readiness. Then came the second broadcast. This time, it came not through satellites or visual projection, but through dreams. Across the globe, people reported identical visions, a vast emptiness, cold and endless, filled with black spires drifting through space like sentient ruin. And something behind them, a presence that couldn't be seen but pressed against the mind like a storm cloud soaked in dread. Lynn woke gasping, her hand shaking. She'd seen it too. The same dark cathedral of cosmic horror, the same feeling of pursuit. When she reported the phenomenon, analysts confirmed hundreds, then thousands of similar reports. Different cultures, different languages, same images. The fleet hadn't just sent data. They had sent experience. And with it, another name, not in words, but a shape, an impression. Lynn later translated it to its closest meaning, the Devourer. That was what followed them. Keen stood beside her as she reviewed the recordings, every muscle tense. If that's real, he said, it's not just Earth at stake. It's the galaxy. She nodded. They've outrun it for a long time, but they're slowing down. And we're its next port of call. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Keen said, So what do we do? Help them? Join them? Hide? Lynn looked at him, her face pale but resolute. We listen, and above them, The ships waited, not as conquerors, but as harbingers. Their silence no longer felt ominous, but patient, as if Earth was being tested, as if its choice might decide what came next. The stars held their breath. The chamber beneath Geneva was colder than it should have been. Buried under 20 meters of reinforced earth and steel, the room hummed with nervous energy and the low drone of filtered air. Around the oval table sat 20 delegates, each representing a different nation, agency, or ideology. At the head, General Daryl Keene stood flanked by screens streaming real-time orbital footage of the alien fleet. "Let's get to it," he said. His voice cut through the room like a clean blade. "We need a unified approach before this turns into a global catastrophe, diplomatic or otherwise." No one responded immediately. A French diplomat adjusted his tie. A Chinese general clenched her jaw. Most eyes drifted to the far end of the table, where Dr. Lin Calder was unrolling a series of images, maps, translated glyphs, and snapshots of the alien transmission arrays. "They've sent us a set of coordinates," she began. 6 locations across the globe, all uninhabited, all geologically stable. "We believe they're asking for landing zones." Keene raised an eyebrow. "Permission to land?" Lin nodded. "It's not a demand. It's a request." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The delegate from India leaned forward. "Why land now? Why not finish speaking from orbit?" "Because," Lin said softly, "what's coming doesn't recognize orbit. If they stay up there, they're targets. They're vulnerable. If they come down, they're anchored. And we're exposed," said the Russian attaché flatly. Keene folded his arms. "They've had every opportunity to strike and haven't. Every military analysis suggests they're holding back tech we can't even conceptualize. The fact that they're asking instead of taking is the only reason we're still having this conversation. Or it's part of the manipulation," muttered someone from the British seat. "No," Lin said. "They're running out of time." Her voice carried more weight than volume. Around her, silence fell again. Keene stepped in. "We form a contact task force, one from each major region. We choose the best linguists, neurobiologists, signal engineers, and behaviorists. No weapons, no aggression. If they're here in peace, we meet them in peace. If not, we'll have fallback contingencies. And if they infect us," someone asked, "psychologically? Biologically?" Lin turned to the speaker. "They've already infected us. We're dreaming their memories, sharing their fear. It's not where they're bringing. It's warning." No vote was taken. There wasn't time. Only a consensus of solemn nods. The world, for once, moved in rare alignment. 3 days later, the first landfall occurred. A tremor rippled to the Mojave Desert as a ship the size of a cathedral descended in perfect silence. No heat plumes. No dust clouds. It didn't touch the ground but hovered just above it, casting a shadow so vast it stretched beyond sight. The contact team, clad in lightweight suits embedded with neuromonitoring tech, approached on foot. At the front of the team was Dr. Ian Shoma, a South African linguist fluent in over 20 Earth languages and 2 constructed alien dialects developed for interstellar messaging. Beside her, Dr. Ren Ishikawa carried a device crafted by Lin's team, an adaptive signal resonator tuned to mimic the harmonic structure of the alien broadcasts. No doors opened. No light shone. The ship simply was an obsidian monolith with edges too smooth to be natural and too perfect to be human-made. Aya stepped forward and activated the resonator. A low vibration pulsed in the sand beneath their feet. Then light, thin filaments of gold and violet bloomed along the ship's hull, forming shifting symbols that floated in midair. Aya spoke, her voice calm but firm. "We receive your message. We welcome peaceful communication." The symbols pulsed, then rearranged. One word appeared, written in both alien script and a fractured translation. "Share." Aya's heart pounded. "What do you want to share?" she asked. This time, no symbols. Instead, an arc of energy surrounded the resonator. The device lit up, displaying images. A stream of visual data burned into light. Scenes of worlds in ruin, skies turning black, oceans evaporating, cities unlike anything on Earth being swallowed by shadow. And behind it all, that same void, that same presence. Aya staggered, her breath hitching. The others watched in mute awe as the footage looped once, then again. Not a threat, a plea, a memory. Rin stepped forward, breath trembling. They want us to know what's chasing them. They want us to understand. Aya looked up at the ship, its alien lines and impossible geometry now somehow less foreign. They don't want us to fight it. They want us to prepare. Over the next week, each ship landed in its designated zone. One in the Gobi Desert, another in the Canadian Arctic, one deep in the Congo Basin, one atop a salt flat in Argentina, the final near the edge of the Australian outback. Each made the same offer. Each shared the same stream of memory and data. As the contact teams rotated, Lynn remained at the Geneva base, watching transmissions, guiding responses, and building a map of what the aliens were showing. The fleet called them the Devourers. No known form, no language, no culture, just entropy made sentient. They moved through galaxies, consuming stars, unraveling quantum constants, erasing reality like sand from stone. And they were always preceded by the same thing, a fleeing species desperate to warn whoever came next. Lynn pieced it together with slow horror. The exiled had been part of a vast civilization, interstellar architects who built star bridges and culture worlds across multiple galaxies. When the Devourers came, their greatest minds turned not to war, but to escape. The exiled were those who left, those who refused to fight a losing war and sought asylum in forgotten corners of space. And now, they'd run out of corners. When Keene received the full report, he said nothing at first. Then quietly he asked, "Can we fight what's coming?" Lynn looked at him, exhausted, haunted. "I don't think we can win." "Then why come here?" She shook her head. "Maybe they saw something in us we don't see in ourselves. Maybe it's not about fighting." Keene clenched his fists. "Then what?" "Maybe it's about surviving together." The question now wasn't whether the aliens meant harm. It was whether humanity could accept the truth in time to act. And above the ship in the Mojave, as night fell and the stars blinked into view, a new light flared at the edge of the sky, small, red, and moving fast. It was still far, but it was coming. The red object at the edge of the solar system had no propulsion signature. It moved like a shadow through space, erasing light without absorbing it. Deep space telescopes watched helplessly as it distorted everything behind it: gravity, radiation, even time signatures. Stars flickered wrong when seen through its path, and it was accelerating. In Geneva, the command center operated around the clock. Dr. Lynn Calder lived there now, a phantom among glowing screens and stale coffee. Her voice, once measured and curious, had turned brittle with urgency. The data left no room for doubt. The entity, no, the Devourer, would enter Earth's orbital vicinity in 12 days. The fleet remained grounded. The exiled no longer shared visions. Their projections ceased the moment the red object appeared. Some believed they were preparing for a last stand. Others feared they had simply given up. General Keene hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were red-rimmed, his uniform rumpled, but he moved with grim clarity. The security of Earth had become his burden to bear, and it was cracking him. "I want a defensive perimeter around every alien landing site," he told his aides. "Not to attack, to observe. If they bolt, we need to know first." No one questioned him. In the Australian outback, something unprecedented occurred. The alien ship there, the most silent, the most dormant, opened. Not a hatch, not a door. It simply unfolded. Geometry unwound into impossible shapes, revealing a hollow that shimmered with pulsing blue light. The contact team approached cautiously. Within minutes, a form emerged. Humanoid, tall, limbs slightly elongated, skin the color of burnished stone. Its face was expressionless, but not blank. Its eyes held depth, vast, ageless sorrow cloaked in intelligence. It didn't speak aloud, but everyone heard it. Not through ears, through thought. You must choose. Lynn was on a jet within the hour. When she arrived at the site, the being was still there, surrounded by a loose ring of soldiers, scientists, and drones, all watching, none daring to interfere. She stepped into the circle, her breath caught. The being turned its head toward her, as though recognizing something. Maybe it did. You saw it. The voice wasn't male or female. It simply was resonating within the folds of her mind. Yes, Lynn said aloud. The devourer. We saw what you fled. Then you understand. Her throat tightened. We're not ready. Earth can't face that alone. No world is ready. Readiness is a myth. What matters is choice. Stand and resist, or kneel and forget. Lynn took a breath, grounding herself. Why us? Why Earth? The being's eyes gleamed, not with light, but memory. You're still young, still chaotic, still capable of change. We have seen civilizations too advanced bend, too perfect to adapt. They perished. You might not. She understood then. Earth's volatility, its division, its unpredictability, was its strength. A species built in the crucible of war and compromise. Primitive, yes, but adaptive. You came here not to hide, she said. You came here to test if we're worth saving. We came to warn. But yes, we hoped. Lynn stepped closer. What do we do? The being extended a hand, not physically, but through thought, a bridge open in her mind, showing blueprints, frequencies, waveforms, impossible knowledge. There is a weapon, but it is not one we could wield. It requires chaos. It requires you. Keen arrived hours later. He was silent as Lynn explained the design. Not a bomb, not a beam, but a resonance amplifier, a device meant to tap into planetary consciousness. It could use emotion as signal, collective will as energy. It was mad. It was untested. And it might be their only hope. The device, if built, would need every nation. Every human alive would become part of it, by thinking, by feeling, by choosing to resist. The exiled called it the harmonic core. Keen stared at the schematics. So we weaponize thought? We amplify belief, Lynn corrected. We turn our chaos into focus. And if humanity refuses, she hesitated. Then we burn. The next 10 days reshaped the world. For the first time in human history, there were no countries, only zones of purpose. Engineers across continents collaborated on fragments of the core. Musicians, monks, shamans, and physicists all contributed. Sound, mantra, intention. Cities became antennae. People gathered in massive fields and virtual spaces, focusing, uniting. Resistance didn't vanish. Some called it delusion. Cults formed around the devourer, worshipping it as a god of cleansing. But they were few. Most chose to believe. Not in the core, perhaps, but in each other. And the exiled helped. They taught quietly, guiding those who listened. They never commanded. They never forced. When the devourer breached the heliosphere, stars flickered and night changed color. Skies became oil-slick veils of unnatural hue. Animals howled without reason. Children cried without knowing why. The core was ready. Lynn stood at the center of the Mojave Array, surrounded by fields of light and humming plates. Keen was beside her, dressed in a combat uniform though there was no battlefield left. You really think this will work? He asked. She didn't lie. No, but I believe it could. He nodded once. Then let's give it everything. All across the planet, people joined, not through wires, but through intention. Billions focused on a single impulse. Survive. The core activated. It didn't explode. It didn't fire. It resonated. A frequency so deep it rippled to the planet's crust, into space, into the void. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. The devourer arrived. It didn't descend. It simply was, like a shadow of entropy stretched across the sky. Stars bent around it. Satellites failed. The moon cracked, but the core held. The signal reached it. And for the first time in its existence, the devourer paused. A flicker, a hesitation. Chaos met chaos. Earth screamed not in fear, but in fury, in unity. And the signal grew. The devourer twisted, not in pain, but in confusion. It recoiled just slightly enough. The exiled watched. Silently, hopefully, and then, impossibly, the devourer retreated. Not destroyed, but turned. Humanity had survived, not through firepower, not through surrender, through will, through a chaos it had finally embraced. And above the clouds, the exiled ships rose once more, no longer as strangers, but as kin,